What is a dismissive avoidant, and how do you know if your partner or your ex is a dismissive avoidant? There are some telltale signs. Dismissive avoidant attachment is an insecure attachment style. You have anxious preoccupied, fearful avoidant attachment, and dismissive avoidant attachment. Fearful avoidants are a hybrid, a combination. They have both anxious preoccupied as well as dismissive avoidant attachment. Dismissive avoidants are the purebred. They are the avoidant in its purest form. They are all avoidant. That said, they do experience anxiety. They often have a ton of anxiety, but the way that they've learned to react to that anxiety is much different than an anxious attacher. A dismissive avoidant, as a whole, they avoid. They've learned to suppress emotions rather than process them, run from problems rather than face them, distract themselves rather than allow themselves to feel and process any kind of negative stressor or emotion. Now, this goes back to childhood. This is a person that was on the receiving end of childhood emotional neglect. They often experienced consistent neglect as a child. They often had very stoic parents, parents that were not emotionally present or nurturing. Now, their feelings were routinely dismissed. If they expressed emotions as a kid, especially negative emotions, their feelings were outright rejected, sometimes even reprimanded. The message was sent, your feelings are not welcome here. They often grew up in households that just don't talk about feelings. Everything is kept surface level. So this is what they learn, that you don't deal with problems, you run from them. You don't talk about your feelings, you bury them. Nobody wants to hear your feelings. Now, the end result is an adult that doesn't really know how to even access their own feelings in a consistent way. This is a person that also has learned to associate emotional closeness with abandonment. This is because they learned from childhood that the people that you're supposed to rely on for your emotional needs are ultimately going to reject you, disappoint you, and perhaps even abandon you. So this is why dismissive avoidants really struggle to be vulnerable in a relationship. They learned it wasn't safe as a child. They also have a deeply rooted fear of losing their independence in a relationship. Again, goes back to childhood for a couple different reasons. One, they learned that the only person that they can rely on for their emotional needs is them. And they also often had a parent that was excessively controlling in their lives, but in a neglectful way where their emotions were not nurtured. So what they learned is that if you let someone close, they smother you. You lose your independence. So losing their independence is now one of their core fears. They essentially fear abandonment, losing their independence, and rejection. So they have now associated emotional intimacy with abandonment and losing your independence. They now also associate commitment labels with abandonment as well. That's because if you commit to somebody, if you put a label on the relationship, it's essentially implied that you have to be vulnerable with this person. You have to be emotionally available for this person. And the dismissive avoidant learned that if you open up your heart to somebody, this person's gonna hurt you. That emotional vulnerability isn't safe. It leads to rejection and abandonment, especially if they are in a relationship with a partner that is consistent, loving, and emotionally available. One of the other results of childhood emotional neglect is the feeling of being unlovable, that they are defective. Dismissive avoidance as children personalize that childhood neglect, that there must be something wrong with them, that they are in fact unlovable. And as an adult in a romantic relationship with a loving partner, they have the subconscious fear that if this person gets to know the real them, if they are vulnerable for this person, this loving partner is going to figure out that they are in fact too good for the avoidant. They're going to reject and abandon them. So when feelings start to grow and emotional intimacy builds, The avoidant keeps themselves safe by pushing this person away or even abruptly ending the relationship. When a dismissive avoidant has their fears triggered, they have learned to deactivate. That means they take their feelings for their partner, they suppress them, they bury them, they detach from their emotions, and they do not allow themselves to access those feelings. Now, they are completely out of touch with their own fears and feelings. They just feel compelled to do this. And they often struggle to articulate to their partners why they're pulling away or abruptly ending a relationship. And they tend to do this when things are going wonderfully, because healthy relationship behaviors are exactly what triggers a dismissive avoidant. The more loving, consistent, and emotionally available a partner is, the more a dismissive avoidant is going to feel unsafe in the relationship because they're being pressured to be vulnerable, and they run for the hills. They also struggle with expectations. If their partner has any kind of expectations, it feels insurmountable to the dismissive avoidant because they were not able to meet their parents' expectations as children. So any expectations, well, they feel like it's inevitable disappointment for the other person, that they're going to let them down. They also fear conflict. Even the slightest disagreement can feel completely insurmountable to a dismissive avoidant. A small disagreement means fundamental incompatibility. Because of their fears and their emotional unavailability, dismissive avoidants, they want an ideal relationship that doesn't really exist in the real world. They want a relationship that they don't have to be vulnerable in. They want a relationship that is easy, without any disagreements, without any expectations. The thing is, that type of relationship doesn't actually exist. But the moment they get their fears triggered and they shut down, the dismissive avoidant will find external reasons to blame their fears and their behavior on, so they can avoid self-reflection and avoid accountability. Accountability is very difficult for a dismissive avoidant. Due to that childhood emotional neglect and the lack of love, they felt unlovable, but also defective. See, there must be something wrong with me, that's why I'm not getting the love. So as an adult, if they self-reflect, which requires taking accountability, that would confirm their own inner defectiveness to themselves. See, I hurt this person because I'm defective. I did this wrong, it's proof I'm defective. Too painful, they don't go there. So dismissive avoidants avoid self-reflection. They avoid processing their emotions. They avoid thinking about their emotions. They avoid dealing with problems, and they avoid reflecting on it. So they often don't even know why they do what they do. And they struggle to articulate things to their partner, especially why they're abruptly ending a loving relationship. And due to that lack of self-reflection, it is very difficult for a dismissive avoidant to change. It is possible. Many of them can change, but it usually requires them hitting rock bottom of sorts, where the consequences of their actions are so painful that it actually motivates them to never go through that again and to do whatever work it takes to heal and become secure. But the lack of self-reflection absolutely is a big challenge because they don't have a self-awareness. They don't even understand what their feelings and their own fears are. And because they don't understand their own feelings, they often struggle to empathize and understand the feelings in their partner. And this is especially the case when they are triggered and shut down. They can be stone cold because they are completely detached from their emotions, which includes empathy. Now, most dismissive avoidants will last in a relationship between 4 to 6 months. Early in the relationship, they can come across very strong and love bomb. Not all do, but many do. This is because their fears haven't been triggered yet. But once something happens that signifies that the relationship is a real relationship with real commitment and real emotional intimacy, they run for the hills. This tends to happen around the 4 to 6 month mark. Of course, some relationships can go much longer and some much shorter, but that's the average with a dismissive avoidant.